Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of the PETHS Alumni Network podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, and today we are joined by Mr. David Tan. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Nathan?
I'm good. Thank you very much for your time on this lovely Friday afternoon here. So to give a bit of background on you, you transferred to PET during your grade 11 year, but you made an instant impact being part of the SDG club, humanitarian club. I think you were a peer tutor as well, and you were also on the tennis team. Do you have any other standout memories for you from high school?
Yeah, I think biggest part of PETS was just like I came in as a transfer. So I came in 11th grade, just how warm and welcoming all the students and teachers were for me. I think I remember my biggest memory is like the teacher I liked the most was Mr. Logan. He was great. Great law teacher, great obviously a very great person and just like helped me out a lot with the transition as well as Mr. Hoken. He taught calculus. He taught me calculus. So yeah.
So you were able to make a huge impact on those, and you obviously excelled at school now. So after PET, you went to Tufts University in the U.S., studying quantitative economics and econometrics. Did you always know that was what you wanted to study? Was it like a matter of figuring out like what subject first and then where to go, or was it kind of like you always wanted to go to the U.S.? How did the process play out for you?
Yeah. So I always wanted to go to the US. I think being in the US just aligned with more what I wanted to do in terms of being in the business world. I think in terms of what I wanted to study in school, I really enjoyed both the math and the science side of things. So, but also like I enjoyed writing and like humanities. So as a result, I going into college, I wasn't really sure what exactly I wanted to concentrate on yet. So that's why I went to Tufts, being a little more of a school where you could choose and like explore your majors the first 2 years. I'm sure you guys all know in Canada, when you apply to uni, you have to apply for a specific program. But at Tufts, which is a uni in the US, it wasn't like that. So that I felt that was more aligned with what I wanted. In terms of quantitative economics, I think it was a good intersection between numbers like math, analysis, data analytics, and also the business side of things, learning how people make choices, right? So economics, it's essentially the study of like choices, how why people make certain choices. I'm sure we learned in school like supply and demand. So that's my biggest reason there. And I also study international relations, which is a major that I was personally really interested in, learning about how global politics works and how we interact with each other, like among countries on a macro level was really cool.
Mhm. So you mentioned Tufts, being very like broad your first 2 years. Were there any other schools that you were looking at?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously all the major schools in Canada, uh, mostly business schools, I would say. So Western Ivy, Queen's Commerce, Rotman, Schulich. I was also looking into McGill's study abroad program they had with Sciences Po. So that was pretty cool. But I think personally, I just didn't want to commit to either business or, um, yeah, like despite I think the financial aid, I think I didn't want to commit to one thing right away. So I just kind of took a gamble and went to the US. And I'm glad it kind of paid off mostly. I really enjoyed obviously the Canadian application process, but I feel like the being in the US it just kind of broadens your perspective in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm a huge proponent of the Ivy program, but how would you kind of pitch someone else going to Tufts? Like, what makes it stand out above the rest?
Yeah. So I think Ivy, obviously you'll get the best business education possible, right? And by Ivy you mean like Western.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. Like Ivy, I think you'll get the best business education possible in Canada. It'll open up doors for you in the US. I think Tufts is a good place for someone who's more or less not 100% if they want to do investment banking or consulting like myself. In college, I mean, sorry, we say college in the United States. What we mean is uni. In uni, I never was fully like sure that I wanted to do consulting. So it took me 2 years to kind of figure that out. First, I wanted to become a diplomat and then maybe investment banking, and then finally landed on consulting because I thought it was fit my personality, fit what I wanted. And as a result, yeah, Tufts is a place where you could explore more. Definitely among the United States, it's one of the best schools called liberal arts universities where you could really like explore and just like figure out what you want to do in a college setting and not commit that early on in high school, right? Because most of us in high school, we think we want to do something. Who knows? Things might change in a few years.
So you touched on the application process in Canada. Um, Obviously, it's a very different process to go to the US. Can you kind of walk us through that? And would you say it was more like difficult to get in or to stay in? Like, which one was more difficult for you?
So definitely to get in.
Yeah.
Staying in, I think it's relatively easier. I've never been to uni in Canada, but in Canada, I'm sure you guys all know. You apply, you have your top six grades. Uh, yeah, you have your top six like grades or marks, etc. Um, and then you submit it to uni. And as a result, you write an essay. That's that, right? The U.S. is very much different. A lot of it's grades, marks slash marks. A lot of it's extracurricular focus, and they are kind of looking for who you are as a person, not just who you are as a student, right? So I think being in the U.S., that really like the US application process, that's where it really kind of diverges from Canadian unis. I think
Mhm.
in the US, it's the application process is very holistic. So they look at three things, your marks and SATs, which are like the quantitative aspect of who you are as a person. They look at your extracurriculars, which kind of shows, who this applicant is beyond the numbers. And lastly, they put a heavy emphasis on recommendation letters and interviews, which is basically a testimony from third parties or like reviewers of who you are as their perspective, right? So that's that. And I find it to be really cool because I think they want to know more about you as a person. Whereas in Canada, all you had to do was do well in school, but not necessarily be involved in other things, which is fine. Like I think I'd rather like I feel like have like if I were to do it over again, I rather would have applied to Canadian unis. My life in high school would have been a lot easier, but yeah, glad I applied to the US, that being said.
Mhm. So you mentioned a big component of recommendation letters, and I've had some guests on who've talked about their stories on how important it is to network, right? Without like telling us who exactly it was, like how did you go about creating a relationship with someone where you felt comfortable asking them for a letter of recommendation?
Yeah, through extracurriculars, I think just being like friends, more so like friends with them, friendly with them, and being personable. Like you're not really meeting them for the recommendation letter. You're more so like building a relationship with them because I don't know, like you're just talking like they're your teachers or they're your like volunteer supporters. So I definitely would approach like these things like not so transactionally, more so like on a just do what you need to do the right thing, and then naturally good things will come to you, like a karma kind of system. I think that's how I approach these things. So I think I went into school. I didn't really focus on like building a relationship to get rec letters. I was more focused on the transition process, just getting to know the professor, sorry, getting to know the teachers, getting to know how they graded. There was some interesting teachers at PETHS for sure that graded things very strangely, so I had to kind of get used to that as well. So I was more focused on that, not so much on the like the building the relationship thing. So that's my advice.
I think that's great advice. Not just asking them for a letter because you feel like you have to, but kind of like getting to know them more, so it's like easy for them to talk about you. Um, you know,
Of course.
speaking on high school and all these things, like you said, you learned how they marked and you kind of had to adjust accordingly. were there any other key learning points that you took with you from PET into university?
So this I learned this from this teacher I had in math. Let's just leave it there. I think the listeners will probably know who this person is. I think it was like grade 11 math. I'm not even sure like what class. It was like the class you took before calculus, like advanced, what something like that. Pre
Advanced functions, maybe.
advanced functions,
Um,
something like that. Something
yeah.
like that. The teacher was very keen on certain ways of grading and grading things based off of his view. So for example, I'll give an example, and this will definitely know like who this is. So if my equal signs didn't line up, he would took a mark off. I think that kind of gave it away. But so instead of arguing with this guy, my it's funny because initially I was like, why is this a thing I should be taking marks off in the US? No teacher did this. Instead of arguing with this person, uh I just learned, oh, to adapt to it, right? Everyone has their own way of doing things. You can't really change how people do certain things. So you just gotta adapt to it and just like respect it and roll with the punches to put it simply, because at the end of the day, they're the ones, your fate is literally in this guy's hand. Like he's deciding whether you get a good mark or not in his class. So not the best idea to argue with this guy, right? To piss him off even more, and like maybe he'll find more excuse my language, like reasons to like take off marks for you in the future, right? So that's my biggest lesson.
Right. So being in business now, something I've been told is, there's a lot of attention to detail, right? Has that kind of helped you?
Yeah. That specific experience, no, but the attention detail piece, definitely. So in college, sorry, I keep saying college, in uni, I did like attention to detail was huge. Like when you wrote essays, when you wrote submitted projects, like everything like number had to be exact, or else you would get marks off, right? And that really applies in the business world. For example, when you're submitting a PowerPoint, when you're submitting something, if a percentage or a number is off, like sure, that it's fine, like in the near term. Like let's say I put like the assumption for this model, we use 3% as assumption, right? Or we use 5%. It's fine, but like maybe the actual number is 4%. You think it's fine now, but let's say like once you submit this and people use your information for like going forward to create more like models, but using based off of the work you submitted, they're gonna create like wrong estimates, etc. So thankfully I haven't learned from experience, but yeah, it's a huge thing for sure.
And these are billions of dollars that we're talking about too. And
Exactly.
speaking on the billions of dollars at stake, so you mentioned the finance side, which is raising money for a lot of these companies to go and buy assets, but now you're on the consulting side, and I kind of feel like even in business school, consulting is a little bit misunderstood. Like to someone who doesn't know consultants, it might be like, why are you asking someone outside the business to tell me about my own business? So in your own words, like, can you kind of explain like what consulting is?
What consulting is? Yep, I get this question every day from my friends too. Most people don't know what it is. Frankly, I don't. I'll give you my best answer, but essentially, what a consultant does is, where I do management consulting, there's educational consulting, physical consulting. Like consulting is a broad term. So when people think of consulting, it's usually management consulting, and you're being consultants, like thought partners. So you're being thought partners to management teams, right? And in McKinsey's context, you're being thought partners to some of the smartest, most successful people in the world. So what you're actually doing on a day to day is doing two things, right? Answering the questions that they have and helping them, like once you answer that question, helping them achieve, like giving them the guidelines, the steps needed to achieve that answer, right? So that's what consulting is in a kind of in a nutshell. Obviously, what we do, there's everything. Like think about like if you're a CEO, Nathan, of a company, you have to worry about finances, you have to worry about marketing, worry about sales, you have to worry about the costs, the operations, you worry about the IT, you have to worry about like risk, you have to worry about like, let me think. people like HR, right? So like management consulting encompasses everything like that. But on a higher level, to like really zoom out, when people think what consultants do, essentially what we're doing is one, like providing CEOs the answers to questions that they have no idea like how to answer, and two, like guiding them into kind of arriving at that answer.
Mhm. So sounds like you have a very, deep toolkit, but also a very broad toolkit at the same time.
Yeah.
What's kind of been like the biggest learning that you've had working in the industry?
I think first of all, like everything is about people, right? Especially industries like these, like software engineering less so, but like within in business, everything's about people. Um, my biggest takeaway is the smartest person in the room doesn't necessarily always become the most successful. It's the people who can build relationships and who can like really like come off as very put together, very smart, and like get notice is are the ones who are the most successful.
So you spoke a lot about, working with these CEOs who are extremely smart, extremely intelligent. Is there anything else that you kind of notice about them that, that you want to emulate, I guess?
The CEOs, the people I've worked with, usually it's not CEOs, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, they have first of all, they come across as very put together, very mature. Like they're natural leaders. They come off as natural leaders. Like if you I walk into the room, and this applies to the partners I work with too. Like if you walk into a room, you can tell who's like a partner and who's not, just by the ways they like carry themselves. And two, they're very knowledgeable about their own company. Obviously, they've founded this. So like if you ask them a question about anything regarding like a business operations, risk, HR, like finances, they'd be able to answer it to you, which is really like something really powerful, right? Because as consultants, we're providing advice, but we never really get deep into a specific company as much as the CEO or the CFO, the CTO, the CIO, right? So as a result, it's very powerful to see someone with that like deep level of expertise in a certain topic. And that's something I've really like admired, first of all, about these C-suite executives I worked with. And two, like learning the importance that although like to my earlier point, people's is everything, having like expertise and having like knowledge about a certain topic is like what ultimately allows you to win. Like being good with people gets you through the door, in my opinion. But like deep expertise, like being smart, to put it simply, is ultimately gonna it's what's gonna like define like how successful you are, right? Like obviously two things, like being good with people and having expertise, being smart. A lot of times people don't have both. I think it's hard with the people I've seen. Worked with a lot of like super smart individuals who are miles and miles smarter than I am, who can probably decode a they could have they all went to Harvard, valedictorians. You get the idea. But sometimes what I've noticed is they're not the best with people. And you get the other side of things, people who can really talk, who are like really friendly, very amicable. But a lot of the times if you really grill them on a specific subject, they're they won't be able to provide you like the best, the most like put together answer. So it's I think what I've learned overall is just about finding balance and yeah, everything's about balance, I think, in business. Everything it's you can't really like succeed with one or the other. But to put it simply, being good with people gets you opportunities, but being having expertise allows you to like ultimately win long term, and that's what I admire a lot about the CEOs I've worked
Right, right. Like I think people are charming at first, and you gradually like them. But the deeper you get into conversation, the more that expertise comes out. It's
with. Yep.
like there's a Venn diagram of book smarts versus street smarts, and like relationship building, and there's like a very small intersection, right? So you mentioned becoming like partner, becoming CEO. All these things are the traits that make them so special.
Yeah.
Do you have any aspirations, whether it relates to traveling, work, school? volunteering, anything like that?
I think I'm gonna be honest, I've thought about this a lot. The short answer is no, not at the moment. I'm just gonna take things one step at a time and figure out what I want to do in life. I think that's the best place for McKinsey. Like what you want to do in life is the best place to figure it out. But my biggest like quote unquote personal aspiration is just to like live to work to live, not live to work. Right. So like being able to have something going on where I could like enjoy lifestyle, have like hopefully like a family, all that stuff, and just like being able to enjoy life. Like family wise, like yeah, like that's all obviously important, but just more on like a higher level, like being able to enjoy life and not having to work. Uh like the you're gaining a lot of passive income, like all that stuff, you get the idea. Like basically being able to live life and not the other way around where you're waking up every day to work, right? You're not living to work at the end of the day, you're living for yourself and you should be able to enjoy that. So that's my like higher level aspiration. In terms of a career, stuff like that, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Maybe like I could tell you more and like if we do this again in 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road, Nathan, I could give you a better
Mhm.
answer, but
Mhm.
not so sure at the moment.
Right, that's totally fair. So you're in Boston with McKinsey, right? Very prestigious consulting firm, and you talked a little bit about wanting to have that work-life balance. Can you like kind of describe like what's the culture like, both like in your own team, but also like in the city that you kind of noticed?
In the city. So my own work. So at McKinsey, we don't really have a team. Like we work on different projects. But the
Mhm.
culture at McKinsey, contrary to popular belief, it's really friendly. People are very supportive. We're hard workers. Like I'm not gonna like sugarcoat that. Like everyone works really hard. Everyone puts in the hours, but people also like want to invest a lot in you back. And as a result, they give you kind of the best like benefits when you're not working, like perks. I think McKinsey, like in the consulting world, is probably like the best at that in terms of like perks, benefits, retention, employer retention. I think because McKinsey really attracts a certain profile of people, which is like really hard workers, really like driven, really obviously sharp and motivated. And me, people like me. And no, but I think honestly, like jokes aside, I think the culture is very like work hard and then you'll get rewarded. In terms of Boston specifically, similar idea. Boston is a city where, contrary to New York, it's a lot filled with a lot of intellectuals. We have some of the best universities in the world here. That I unfortunately didn't get to attend, but no, like they're great. Met a lot of people who are very smart, who go into Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Boston College, Northeastern University, etc., who are all very smart. So you're surrounded by a lot of like intellectuals, and you really get that culture there too. So it's a good balance between, for me at least, like business, like work, and also talking to a lot of like smart people who are passionate about other things like science, medicine is huge, computer science, obviously at MIT. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a great place to be like overall, and pretty happy with where I'm at right now.
Mhm. I know you mentioned, you don't have any like concrete plans, but is there anywhere that you kind of thought that maybe you want to either travel to or work? Like, are there any cities around the
Oh,
world?
where I want to travel to?
Yeah,
That's another question.
yeah.
Where I wanna travel to? That's a good question. I think I would want to travel to London, like work wise. I want to travel to London to do something sustainability related. So I was involved with like a lot of sustainability stuff in high school, as you mentioned, like SDG. That's a big one, right? So I think Europe right now is more like it's pushing more for those like environmental initiatives compared to like North America. So being able to be at the center of that, like in London, will be cool, right? On a personal level, though, I always wanted to go to Sydney, Australia. Never been. Right now, it's like the best time to go, apparently. So I always wanted to go there and just like see the city. Sydney, Australia. I think I would like to go to like Paris again.
Mhm.
Paris is very nice. Other than that, yeah. I think that's all I could give you at the moment. Hopefully
Yeah.
that's enough.
Would you ever consider, going to school there, maybe?
Yeah, I could. I mean, I think my philosophy with school is like, don't go back to school unless you really need it. Like, I think it'd be cool to take a break if someone else, like your company is paying for it. It'd be cool. But at the same time, you're like, do you really need an MBA if you're already in McKinsey? Is like my personal opinion, right? Obviously, a lot of people go to MBAs. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of friends who are like planning on doing it too. It's a good time to like travel, have fun, meet new people. I think
Mhm.
personally for me, I just think if I were to go to grad school, it'd be something different, like maybe an engineering degree, maybe like something in computer science, right? Something different that I've studied in college to kind of build that expertise, right?
Mhm.
And I'm saying this now, but I think I'm obviously open to like an MBA, just like taking some time off to like explore my passions, right? Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, school is definitely on the horizon. In terms of where I want to go to school, that's a whole different question. I think I'm open to anywhere in the world.
Mhm.
McKinsey is pretty open to that, right? Like
Yeah.
giving you opportunities to like go explore what you want to do. So yeah.
So, we've asked you a ton of questions. We've talked a lot about school, work, but what about David, like himself? What are some things, like a fun fact about yourself, or something that's outside of work or school that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm a boring person. All I do is work and no, I'm just kidding. I follow a lot of like soccer in my spare time, so I'm a big fan of Liverpool. That's my team. I've been trying to get more into outdoors. So I grew up in Vancouver, so like Vancouver. So hiked and skied every weekend as a kid. Trying to kind of do that more now that I'm working and have like there's like a greater need to be in shape and
Mhm.
like exercise more and doing a lot of running too, working out. One thing I'm looking to do more is like to like read and like to spend more time like kind of indoors, like doing things like cooking, reading. I think it's pretty cool, right? Like never thought about it. Like pretty cool thing to get into. So something
Mhm.
I'm getting into more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're in the best sports city in the world.
Oh yeah.
You're a big
It's
fan of
okay.
any.
Yeah. I don't. Okay, so American sports I follow relatively less. I used to be a huge Canucks fan as a kid
Mhm.
growing up in Vancouver. Back in the Roberto Luongo, Henrik, and Daniel Sedin days.
Yeah.
So that was like Alex Burrows. That was like a long time ago,
So
right?
you hate the Bruins then?
Yeah, like more. I remember. No, I was like I remember very vividly in the Stanley Cup Finals, like when they beat us, like what was going on in Vancouver. So I remember it very vividly. Uh, I'm not a fan of like Boston. Like, sorry, I don't follow that much like American sports these days. But if I were to pick, I'd say like Celtics because I mean they have the Raptors. Right? Like we have the Raptors in Canada. I'm a Raptors fan, but not a Celtics fan. But
Mhm.
that's like the closest thing I've like kind of followed to American sports. I'm a big like
Mhm.
fan of tennis, soccer,
Mhm.
squash, which is
Mhm.
like all the European sports, is
Yeah.
which is kind of weird, but yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. What about pickleball? It's a new corporate sport.
Yeah, a lot of pickleball going on in Boston. I think it's kind of interesting to see how like a sport can blow up in like instantly. Yeah, it's pretty convenient. It's a good way to like network, meet people too. A lot of
Hmm.
companies like have their own pickleball facilities, which
Hmm.
is pretty cool.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, other than
Yeah.
that, it's a cool place.
Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in where everyone's doing that now. It's almost replacing golf. But to wrap up, we talked a lot offline. We had a lot of mutual friends back in high school, things like that. If you could nominate another pet grad or any number of pet grads to be on the podcast, who would it be?
Oh, uh, that's a good question.
Yeah,
Well, Meng Yu
yeah.
Gao is someone you
Hmm.
should talk to.
Hmm.
Meng Yu Gao, who else? I mean you had Vic. I mean Vic
Hmm.
is obviously really
Hmm.
like someone I recommend. Should talk to Nick
Hmm.
Chu.
Wrapping up, thank you very much, David, for your time on this lovely Friday afternoon. Thanks for telling us about your journey, transferring to PET, taking on these leadership positions, applying university and finding your way in consulting. We really appreciate your time. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and we'll see everyone next week.